welcome to another episode of the Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua the Genius, and today we're going to be talking about some financial information, some new technology that has come out, and some events that are going on our planet that we haven't seen since World War II. So before we get in too deep, I'm going to start with some of the new technology that's going to be coming out here soon, and just some updates about our chip shortage, and then we'll dive right in. Okay. So first, I want to talk about there's some new features coming to Apple Pay. iPhones now will be able to take payment directly from iPhones or credit cards, debit cards, or other digital wallets. So if you were, a small business or a retailer that was using a payment terminal, you can now use your iPhone as that payment terminal. I know here in the shop we use a Clover device, and that Clover device allows for customers to put their iPhone on the top portion of the Clover, and it does that transaction through the Clover for us through NFC. We've talked about the NFC technology before. That's near field communication, and that's the technology that allows for contactless payment between iPhones, or you look on your credit cards or debit cards, you see that little small, it looks like a little small SIM card, right? Built into the credit card. That is the chip reader, and then on the underside there is also an NFC chip built inside, so you can use that to do your contactless payment. But now with the iPhone, you can remove the Clover, and you can take that payment directly on the device, which I think is pretty cool. It's going to open up some really cool experiences and customer flows for different work environments and different retail experiences, which I think is cool. And it's just going to allow people to just be more flexible with how they transfer funds, right, and be able to interact and pay for things throughout the world. You're not going to be so reliant upon third-party technology or something stationary. You can use your iPhone or your watch or anything that allows you to do that NFC payment to the iPhone and be able to transfer those funds. And I think as we get more to a more wireless world, as people become more open to using cryptocurrency and using other vehicles for financial transactions, I think that this comes at a really good time. And you need a iPhone XS or higher to be able to utilize this feature on your iPhone. And for privacy and for your peace of mind, the transactions are processed through the Secure Enclave and Secure Element. The Secure Element is basically a chip that makes sure that the transactions that are being done digitally are up to standard, right? That they meet all the standards of the financial regulators around the world to make sure that your transactions are safe. And they're also processed through the Secure Enclave. And the Secure Enclave is that private part of your device where your most sensitive information is stored, such as your password, user information, information about your billing details with your credit cards. That's where the majority of that information is stored. It's a very private area of your phone, and those transactions are processed through there. So only the information that's necessary to facilitate the transaction is given to the other device through NFC. None of your personal information is compromised utilizing that transaction method. So I feel good about that. And most people, I think nowadays, as you upgrade, we're in 2022. The iPhone XS came out probably about 5 years ago now, maybe even a little more. So as you upgrade, you'll be able to take immediately use of this feature. And like I said, I have a Clover here in the shop, and I'm anxious to see how this rolls out, because this might be replacing my Clover in the long run. We'll see. Next up is the shortage with our TSMC, a company that's the largest chip manufacturer in the world. They are now saying that the chip shortage is going to start to level out a little bit, closer to winter of 2022. So as we get closer into, I would say maybe around November-ish, we're going to start to see some things level out. Now, this chip shortage hasn't really affected Apple. Apple is their biggest customer at this time, and they've been able to generate a lot of manufacturing of the iPhone 13 and some of their other Apple products that have come out this year. However, they haven't been, the inventory has not been as high, and they've had to prioritize the iPhone 13 manufacturing over some of the iPads and MacBook Pros. The iPhone 14, the MacBook Pro and the 14-inch MacBook Pro, 14-inch and 16-inch, are both on low inventory, very, very low stock of those. And it's saying that if this levels out, the iPhone 14, when it does come out, should have a good inventory set on first release, but we'll see. Down here in the Virgin Islands, we're seeing a lot of the retailers of iPhones having very, very low stock of some of the more popular iPhone models. We're talking iPhone 13 with a high storage capacity, also has the 13 Pro Max high storage capacity. Most people don't want the default storage capacity of iPhones. They want to get a little more, but those are few and far in between down here in the Virgin Islands. So a lot of people are opting to repair their devices as opposed to get them replaced at this time, just because there's just not, the inventory isn't there. So hopefully that evens out as we get closer to the manufacturing of the iPhone 14 and closer to the end of 2022. You will also start to see with these chips, because TSMC, they make chips for a plethora of different companies, and these companies hopefully will start to see some leveling out of their supplies. We're talking about, car manufacturers, plane manufacturers, boat manufacturers, people that need to use integrated circuits in their products. TSMC is that big a supplier. So as their team is able to level out their workload, we should see a positive impact in the manufacturing of these products. So we'll see what happens. And yeah, so that brings us into our big topic of this podcast is right now. There is a war occurring over in Europe between Russia and the Ukraine. The Ukraine was invaded this past Thursday, February 24th, 2022. And the war is still occurring. Today is Sunday, February 27th, as we're recording this podcast. So before I get started, I just want to send my prayers. I've been saying prayers for the people of the Ukraine since this information hit the news. I have some customers and clients that are from the Ukraine that have family and friends there. So I can't begin to imagine what you're going through right now. But I just, want to utilize my platform to just say that, we're here at the shop, we're praying for you. We hope that your family and friends are able to make it out of this war safely, and that the information that is relayed through this podcast hopefully can bring, light and more understanding of why Russia and Ukraine are even at war to begin with. So with that said, I'll just start a little bit with my understanding of the conflict and a little bit of history behind why this war is occurring. Right after World War II, we entered what was called the Cold War. And during the Cold War, there was high tension between the United States and its allies and the Soviet Union and their allies, to the point where we almost came to a large nuclear fight. There was the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was the building of the Berlin Wall. There was tons of espionage and secret spy missions and just covert ops, and there was just a lot going on during the Cold War as it pertains to countries that supported capitalism as opposed to countries that supported communism. Okay, It wasn't until we get into the late 90s, early 90s, in I believe it's 1991. In 1991 is when, around when the USSR, the Soviet Union, dismantled, and Russia became an independent state. And in 1991, that's when the Ukraine became an independent country. And since 1991, Ukraine has celebrated and supported their independence from Russia, from the Soviet Union, and has operated as an independent country. And in 1994, the Budapest Memorandum was signed. And in 1994, right after the Cold War ended, Ukraine was one of the largest land masses in Europe, and it was one of the second largest country to hold nuclear missiles and nuclear material. And the Budapest Memorandum basically was signed to remove the missiles and material from the Ukraine in exchange for their continued sovereignty, and as well as protection in the event that any other country would come in and try to overtake them, or try to deny them their sovereignty. Okay. In 2008, NATO wants Ukraine to be a part of its organization, and NATO is basically the coalition of countries devoted to peace among the North Atlantic area of the world. So between North America, Europe, parts of Asia, it's a coalition of countries dedicated to seeing the peace between those areas. When this was brought to NATO as an option, Putin, who was the president at that time, stepped in and said that he did not want the Ukraine to be a part of NATO. And the reason being was because the Ukraine shares a border with Russia, number one, and that Putin did not acknowledge Ukraine as a sovereign country. They said they are not a country. They're basically stating that they are still a part of us. That was between 2008 that was 2008. In 2021, Putin has issues with how the Ukrainian oligarchs, so these are the Russian elites that are in the Ukraine, the current president of the Ukraine, was basically sanctioning and dismantling the Russian oligarchs in the Ukraine, and Putin did not take too kindly to that. And so in 2021, he moved troops closer to the Ukrainian border, and this past Thursday, he initiated his land, sea, and air strikes towards the Ukrainian people in attempts to overthrow their government, and I believe to reabsorb the Ukraine back into Russia. That seems like where this is going. And so, this isn't a political podcast. I just wanted to give you just a little bit of background on just some research that I've done into the history of this conflict. There's some other information that I've come across about this conflict regarding to the nationalism the Russian government feels in regards to the other countries that separated from the Soviet Union. More so the difference in ideologies between capitalism and communism, right? The countries that disbanded more from Russia engaged and embraced capitalism more and a more westward perspective of how to live life and how to govern society, as opposed to the Russian ideology or what might be called the the original or national ideology of communism, of how to run your society. So I'm not real sure. This is just a little difficult to talk about because I just feel so strongly during this war, because there's been conferences and conversations from members of African government speaking about this current atrocity, right? And seeing this current atrocity unfold, being 33, I witnessed 9/11. I witnessed, living through Hurricane Katrina, living through down here Hurricane Irma and Maria, living through pandemics, and now living through potentially the start of World War III. And that might be a little extreme, but given history, it seems like history is going to repeat itself. And that might be a very dark perspective, but it's what I see. Because I go back to the Kenyan Prime Minister, I believe. I can't remember his name. We'll make sure that we drop it in the comments. But he was speaking to the lack of empathy of other European nations when Africa was being pillaged by European nations. There were countries who had meetings and they decided on how they were going to divvy up Africa. And he was saying that the lines that separate Africa's countries weren't drawn by Africans. They were drawn by imperialists. And that struck a chord with me, because I think about how my ancestors felt when their land was being taken from them, when their family was being killed in efforts of colonialism and imperialism. And now I see it happening to the people of the Ukraine, and I can't help but to feel I can't help but to hurt for them, to witness this occur and not be able to do much about it, but to have this conversation that we're having now, and to hopefully utilize my platform just to get some information out there that might compel others to support and get more information out there to bring more light to this situation. But I do hurt for the people of the Ukraine. And so we think where Putin is going and what his overall goal is. And like I said, I think that from what I've seen and from the research that I've done thus far, it's to reintegrate the Ukraine back into Russia. And so we look at, from a geopolitical standpoint, of where the Ukraine and Russia sit, where Russia supports, I believe it was about a quarter of all the Ukraine and Russia altogether support about 25%, about a quarter of all of the wheat production and exports in the world. And the oil reserves and the oil refineries that are in Russia, they support a lot of the natural gas exports to Europe. So this is, I see political moves here, but I also see resourceful moves here, right? And so where our government stands is that President Biden has said that we will not engage with Russia directly on the soil of the Ukraine, meaning that we will not send troops to the Ukraine to fight. However, we do have troops in Germany and other neighboring allied nations where if Putin attempts to move onward outside of the Ukraine, the American government and also its allies are prepared to meet him with the entire force of the American government and its allies. So that hasn't occurred yet. But what has occurred is the crippling of the Ukrainian environment and the Ukrainian ecosystem and their entire economical structure. There have been tweets and information coming out of Ukraine that the Ukrainian people's credit cards, bank accounts are no longer working. That they cannot access their money, that they cannot access can access certain financial resources in order to help themselves in the Ukraine or to flee the Ukraine. It's difficult to see. It's difficult to watch. Our president has enacted sanctions on President Putin in efforts to deter him from his continued onslaught. Some of those have been the export of technology from Russia, meaning that they cannot profit off of technology being exported out of their country. Asset freezes on the Russian elite, meaning that if the Russian elites have assets in allied countries with America, those assets are going to be frozen. Homes, vehicles, money, so that they are not able to move or support Russia in this onslaught. And the big one has been this conversation around, and this brings us back to the technology piece behind this, is the removal of Russia from the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is a financial system that helps facilitate cross-border transactions, cross-border financial transactions. Okay, SWIFT stands for the Society Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast, right? And Russia being removed from this system would be the most damaging to their economic structure. Remember that sanctions are penalties for going against the law or going against an agreement. They're penalties. They're not acts of war. They're penalties. So basically, the United States is trying to cripple the Russian economy so that they don't have the finances or resources to continue their war. As opposed to going to fight them, we're going to try to cut the feet from underneath them by removing their ability to do business outside of their borders. Okay, the way that the SWIFT network works is it basically takes a code, a bit code, and a bit code is a bank identifier code. It takes this code and it helps send and receive information about financial transactions to make sure that money goes into the correct account. Okay, the SWIFT network doesn't actually hold the money and initiate the transfer. The SWIFT network basically gives a bank an identifier code, and with that identifier code, it's a standardized code. So if that same code is sent from North America to Australia, from Australia to China, that same code would be understood by all 3 countries, right? And so, or the United States is the country, right? So with that bank code, The standardization of that allows for very user-friendly and less error-prone financial transactions. And because these countries are doing so much business, and the value of having a very fast network for buying and sending money, right, buying if Russia needs to export wheat to Australia, they'll be able to utilize the SWIFT network to make that easy transaction, so the economies can keep going. Right? There's not a lot of lag time for the process of that financial transaction for purchasing assets for your country. Right? If we remove Russia from that infrastructure, then they are no longer able to do business with other countries, meaning that their overall profits will start to decrease, and subsequently they wouldn't have the resources to continue the war, and that would stop the onslaught of Putin at this point. There are those that agree with the removal of Russia from the SWIFT network. There are those that are opposed to it. Ones that are supportive of it see it as the most damaging and most efficient way to cripple the Russian society. There are others on the opposing side that feel that if Russia is removed from this network, then the export of their oil and the export of wheat will be felt negatively, not only in Europe, but around the world. Right? We're already starting to see very high spikes in oil, very high spikes in food, not even due to this current conflict, but due to the way that some of our ships are moving right now. We're having blockades and disruptions in our factories, and disruptions in our what's the word I'm looking for here, with our cargo and trucking facilities. I know that there's a word for this. I just can't remember right now. But anyway, we're seeing that right now, and this war is only going to exacerbate that. So, as of this podcast on Sunday, February 27th, 2022, the president has removed some Russian banks from the SWIFT network. Okay, not all, but some banks have been removed from the SWIFT network. And so hopefully we will see a negative effect on the Russian military and Russian government, and hopefully this will deter them from their continued their continued war against the Ukrainian people. I find SWIFT to be very interesting because it mimics another system that we use in cryptocurrency, which is the blockchain. Okay, the blockchain also uses codes for identifiers. Right now, I'm pretty sure with these standardized codes, I haven't looked fully through all of how SWIFT is set up. Excuse me. I haven't looked fully through how SWIFT is set up, but the way that Bitcoin network, Ethereum networks, any cryptocurrency networks, the way that they populate the hexes. For the hexes are the alphanumeric string of letters and numbers that identify either the block on the blockchain or you as a person. Okay, and so right now, even though the Ukrainian economic structure is failing, the economy is failing, the people of the Ukraine are still able to utilize cryptocurrency networks to send and receive money from their friends and family and allies. As of this podcast, there's been $13 million that has been donated directly to the Ukraine to support them in this war. That's been done over the Bitcoin network, and the average donation was about $95. The Ukrainian government came out on Twitter, and they posted their public address for their Bitcoin wallet, and people have utilized it to send funds directly to them, so that they can now utilize those funds to buy assets from other countries or from other places utilizing cryptocurrency. And there's other areas of the world outside of the Ukraine and other countries that will take Bitcoin as a form of payment, as opposed to the money that was being used there before, which they no longer have access to. So I'll say that again. I find it very, very interesting that now, as we're sitting here in 2022, that during this war, that the Ukrainian people are able to utilize a new technology to legitimately support themselves in a financial way. They are being cut off from banking institutions, from traditional banking institutions. And now they're able to utilize the Bitcoin network, and I'm pretty sure they're utilizing other cryptocurrency networks to get other forms of cryptocurrency to do business with other countries. So I just want to highlight this as a utility of cryptocurrency. We see how it's being used in real time for a real world experience, and it's being used to empower an entire nation. So I'm from that standpoint, I'm excited to see how Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are able to leverage the resources that they're getting through cryptocurrency. Let's see, I got a couple other points here. Just a little bit more on SWIFT. There's 11,000 financial institutions in over 200 countries. There's 11,000 financial institutions in over 200 countries that are part of the SWIFT network. And like I said, that BIC code, that bank identifier code, I think it's about 8 or 9 characters, and that's just utilized on the transaction, so you know where the transaction is coming from, where it needs to go to, how much it is. It's just like the ledger on the blockchain, right? It's just a ledger built into a code. Okay. There's also a shared space of where the asset actually lives, where the money actually lives. So once the SWIFT network sends out information on what money it needs to release, that money is then released to the recipient. Okay. The SWIFT network doesn't actually facilitate the transaction. It just communicates the information necessary to facilitate the transaction. Okay. And so learning more about that, learning more about the blockchain and how cryptocurrency works, I think, again, is very, very important for those that are looking to utilize technology in a new way, and utilizing and looking to utilize their financial assets in a new way. Okay. With that being said, the public address for the Ukraine will put in the comment section. So if you feel so compelled to support the Ukrainian people, you can do so through their public address on the blockchain. Two things. Meta, so the Facebook company, and YouTube are stopping monetization of certain Russian profiles on their platforms. Again, another measure to try to stop the amount of resources that Russia can access as they're at war. So, Russian influencers, people that are utilizing the Facebook platform, the YouTube platform, anything that's owned by Facebook, they are no longer able to monetize and make money from those platforms. There's been a call to action from Apple to remove Russia from the App Store. Now, I haven't heard anything yet on Tim Tim Cook's stand on that. But that would be a very significant move, to remove the Russian App Store, or to disable the Russian App Store, and disable the ability for those in Russia in that location to access whatever App Store outside of Russia. I think would be beneficial. But we'll see. We'll see. Right now, these are the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia to dismantle their economy, to try to thwart them from this war, and to try to thwart a nuclear war. And as American citizens, we can be in solidarity with them. We can support them through our prayers, and we can support the Ukrainian people monetarily, if you feel compelled to do so, currently right now through cryptocurrency. And like I said, we'll put that link down in the description. But I think that's where I'm going to stop on this. This topic has been heavy on my heart since Thursday, and I've just been trying to figure out the best way to come in and articulate my thoughts behind it, and making sure that I'm being sensitive with the information that I'm being given, and being sensitive with the information that I give to you all. So please, if I have maybe misspoke on a certain topic, or if there's more information that you can provide to me to broaden my understanding of this conflict, please feel free to drop some information down in the comment section. Email me here at the store. I'll drop an email down in the comment section as well. That's the Jenius Podcast at gmail.com. And yeah, man, I just want to again say that my thoughts and my prayers are out to the people of the Ukraine. And if there is something that we can do on this end to further help, please feel free to reach out. If you're here in St. Thomas and you need any Apple support for your products, whether it be repairs of screens, new chargers, if you need new cases, tempered screens, you need some work done on your back cameras, anything that you need as far as repair and maintenance or accessory related, please give us a call here at the store, 340-227-3821. We're here in the store Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, and on the weekend from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. All right. And if you are into the cryptocurrency space, we always want to support Coinbase. Coinbase is one of the top premier platforms that you can use to buy and sell cryptocurrency. We'll have a link in the description that if you use that link, you'll get $10 free of Bitcoin. All right. And if you are looking to receive Bitcoin, as a business, as an entrepreneur, you can set up what's called a public domain, public address, right? And it's through a company called Unstoppable Domains. And through Unstoppable Domains, you can basically translate your public address into something readable. So the public address is a very long string of letters and numbers. You can translate that very long string of letters and numbers into a readable address, right? And I think that's very, very beneficial. Ours here at the store is joshuathegenius.crypto. And utilizing that, people can send us Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Litecoin, and Dogecoin. And so we accept all those cryptocurrencies here at the store as means of payment. So, as cryptocurrency becomes more popular, the adoption of it continues to increase. You will start to see more companies publicize their public addresses and publicize that they are taking these different forms of cryptocurrencies as payment. So I think that wraps up this episode. We're going to be doing some interview-based podcasts in these next 2-3 months. So we hope that this change of kind of not pace but format Not to say that this is going to stop, this one-on-one and two-on-one is going to stop, but we just want to bring in some other minds and just have some other conversations. So stay tuned for that. And we are always open for feedback, for different ideas for podcasts, or just any general feedback you want to give to us as podcasters. But in the meantime, until the next episode, we hope that everyone out there stays safe, stay prayed up. Remember that, we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised tomorrow. We can only do with the time that we have currently. And I think that we should always, just make sure that we are focused on making sure our loved ones know that we love them, and that we're focused on doing what makes us happy. Okay. So until next time, I'll see you. Have a good one. Peace.